You're watching Shalom TV, celebrating Jewish culture. Funding for Shalom TV has been provided by the following. And by viewers like you.
So at the AIFL dinner, I'm standing now with the chairman, Ken Bialkin. What a wonderful event. First of all, can you encapsulate for me, what is it that you're hoping comes out of the evening, and what do you hope for the AIFL, the American-Israel Friendship League?
The evening is a wonderful evening. It's a wonderful success already. We've done very well financially. We have a Class A crowd, and this morning we opened the trading on the New York Stock Exchange by ringing the bell at the New York Exchange. Look at the New York Stock Exchange proclaimed today Israel Day at the New York Stock Exchange, and we had a showcase of the various ways in which Israel is a startup nation. Everyone knows Israel is a startup nation because of the book, which deals with companies in the high-tech and electronic field. But Israel is a startup nation in every other respect of human endeavor, in art, in architecture, in medicine, in science, in social development, in democracy, in absorption. The world respects Israel. Israel has many friends. Israel has more Nobel Prize winners than any other country in the world per capita. So you might wonder, if Israel is so good and so admired and so respected, how come it can't win a vote at the UN? How come the Palestinians can get all of our friends to abstain when they're asked about voting on the question of whether Israel should be mortified and penalized by a unilateral declaration of independence for the Palestinians?
One last question. If there was one thing you felt the American community at large, not the Jewish community in particular, but general America, if there was one thing you would want them to understand about Israel, Ken, what would it be?
Understand that Israel is and has become a light among nations. It's been through 7 or 8 wars and constant terrorism. It's fought every one. It's remained a democracy. Its people have grown. The per capita income rivals that of most Western countries, exceeds many. The world has got to come and appreciate what peace with Israel and friendship for Israel can do to their neighbors, to the region, and the world. They should get with it and stop penalizing Israel for a false, phony, inaccurate, and wholly manufactured narrative of a Palestinian history in the region. The history in the region is Israel and the Jewish people for almost 4,000 years. And the more people can understand that and face it rationally, my hope, my belief, my aim is to get people to understand that Israel is a force for good, and the Arabs and others should take note of that, make peace, and benefit from what peace will bring.
We thank God for the land of freedom and opportunity, our blessed United States of America. We thank God for the young democracy, the startup nation, State of Israel. Creativity can only survive in the land of freedom. Democracy and creativity are products of freedom. May God help these two nations spread the light of freedom through knowledge, education, understanding, compassion, and a dedication to world peace. And let us all say, Amen.
I'm standing here with one of the great rabbis of our era, the rabbi of Park East Synagogue here in New York City, Arthur Schneier. First of all, what an event, yes?
A lot of energy, a lot of creativity. You feel it. You really feel it.
If you had to summarize why AIFL is important, the American Israel Friendship League, Arthur, what's the reason?
I believe it's the bridge building aspect of the American Israel Friendship League. Cutting across not only top level diplomats, but what I call people-to-people diplomacy. Bringing to Israel scientists, educators, attorney generals, and so forth. And that's the greatest strength. Not too many, even the U.S. government encourages people-to-people diplomacy. And that's the greatest contribution.
In some way, Arthur, that's what you've been doing through your rabbinate for many years. You have traveled with people, not only abroad to Rome, visited the Pope, but also you've been to Israel with many people as well. If you had to put your finger on one or two of the things that you wish American Jews understood better, understood more about the state of Israel, what would it be?
First, visit Israel. There's nothing like seeing. And don't be discouraged by newspaper reports. Seeing is much better than hearing, okay? So go to Israel, experience it, love it.
Arthur Schneier has been doing work for the Jewish community his entire rabbinic career. I wish you kol tuv v'hatzlacha. It's always wonderful to spend a moment with you on Shalom TV. Thank you, Arthur Schneier.
I think there's nothing more appropriate than celebrating the new Israel that we all know and that we all love and that we all cherish. Startup Nation is actually a story about the creative Israeli spirit that made the Israeli economic miracle possible. And the creative Israeli spirit goes back to the very DNA of our people. There is a new narrative out there being celebrated by younger Jews and younger Israelis. And in that narrative, Israel is a success story. Israel is all about modernity. It's all about creativity and innovation. And Israel is a source of inspiration to the entire world. If you ask me, that's the secret of the success of Startup Nation. It serves as an inspiration for others. And this is what we are all here to celebrate. Israel is a source of inspiration. God bless you all and thank you.
What do you want people to understand about the AIFL?
We are a boutique operation that takes decision makers to Israel to show them how Israel really is and not the way it's portrayed in the media. And that's why we take state attorneys general, school superintendents, third-year Harvard law students, and many others to Israel, law professors, professors who are teaching Middle Eastern studies, all in the attempt for them to see what Israel is really like. And I must tell you that the term that they use when they come back is transformational.
Thank you for having Shalom TV here. You do marvelous work. We're always privileged to be with you, Alex.
It's our privilege. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex Grubman.
Thank you.
The world before Startup Nation is not like the world afterwards. It has literally given a new life to our brand of Israel. In fact, for many years, people would often come to me and say, how come we don't have in this generation a Leon Uris who can capture the essence of Israel in a new book, a new Exodus? Well, ladies and gentlemen, that new book, that new Exodus is Startup Nation. And that's what we're here to celebrate tonight. I live in Israel. I've got kids in the army. I'm a patriot. And I've been involved in telling the story about Startup Nation for decades.
As Dan said, even before the book.
Even before the book. 2 years after landing in Israel, where I studied history in college, my father shows up, my late father, Zichrono Bracha.
Name?
Dr. David Medved, who was a serial entrepreneur himself, had built our first house with the proceeds of Xerox stock options. So I knew about stock options, but all I knew. He asked me to go with him on a trip up to Raphael, which is the Armament Development Authority, and to go meet some scientists who were, he was in contact with it, so he could write off, the whole trip, taxes. And I said, Dad, I'll be happy to take you. We go up there. They start talking fiber optics because that's what he was doing. And it was Chinese. I had no clue. I studied history. I never studied electronics or chemistry or physics or anything like that. And at the end of this meeting, these scientists turned to me and said, young Medved, what do you do in Israel? And I said, well, I'm studying a little history. I lecture to some kibbutz groups about Jewish, history and Zionism. They looked at me and said, what a waste. I said, what a waste. I just made Aliyah. I'm fulfilling the Zionist dream. This is wonderful. And they said, no, what your father's doing, this fiber optic communications, this is Zionism today. Go help your father and build a factory, bring his technology to Israel. And so on the way home from Haifa to Jerusalem where I lived, I said, Dad, what do you do again? What is this fiber optic stuff? And I eventually got involved with my father, built a company, sold it successfully to the Amoco Corporation, and that's how I got started in tech. I mean, I'm a closet admirer, maybe I'm out of the closet already, of Ken Bialkin, everything that he's done for the Jewish people and for the Jewish community in America and for the relationship with Israel. And the AIFL, what it does in terms of bringing groups to Israel to get that magic that can only be gotten by being on the scene is incredible. So that's why I schlepped all the way over here to be here and to MC it. It's a lot of fun, not always easy. It's a tough audience and a tough crowd. But I'm glad I was here.
You were
the challenge.
Outstanding. One last question. When you look today at the young American Jew who was born after the State of Israel was created and does not know any time there was not a State of Israel, who has basically never experienced anti-Semitism, for whom the Holocaust is ancient history and the movement of Soviet Jewry is long since over, many of the things that motivated the people in this room don't resonate today with young people.
But that's why we've got Startup Nation. In other words, identity is not about the head. Identity is about the heart. And it's almost like which team, you support and root for. You're not a Giants or, a Jets fan because of some mental discussion about the partition plan of 1948.
Right.
Okay? It's because it's in your kishkas and it's in your heart. And these kids, many of them don't have what to be proud of, okay? Because all they hear about is Holocaust and the old days and these arguments, and we get into historical Narishkeit, excuse the phrase, which really doesn't interest them. And they're tired of hearing about Israel, the oppressor, and Israel's not cool. And it's crazy because we are super cool. We have this incredible dynamic startup economy, innovation and culture, and we're diverse, and we're cutting edge, and we're hip. And this is what's going to bring the Jewish youth back to Israel. And that's why I'm so delighted to be part of this AIFL dinner tonight.
John, you're cool, you're hip, you're wonderful. Listen, if I ever get to Israel, can I talk to you on Shalom TV?
I would be delighted.
I would be honored. Okay. John Medved.
There is a song. They're convinced in Israel that it's a Jewish song. It's Puff the Magic Dragon. And for tonight, and they do sing it, and we do sing it there, in Arabic, in Hebrew, in English. But for tonight, do you know who Puff the Magic Dragon is? Puff the Magic Dragon is the America-Israel Friendship League that we celebrate. So sing with me. Puff the Magic Dragon lived by the sea and frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Hoenlein. Oi, little Jackie Paper loved that rascal Puff and brought in strings and sealing wax and other fancy stuff. Oh, Puff lived by the sea and frolicked in the autumn mist in the land of Galilee. I mean Honoree, Puff the Magic.
Peter has worked in two schools in Lod, 2 schools in Petah Tikva, Arab Israeli, Jewish Israeli, to bring the kids and their communities together. Peter would sing his songs in English. The same songs would be sung by David Roja in Hebrew. The same songs would be sung by Amal Marcus in Arabic.
In a land called Hana, Lee, thank you for all your wonderful work, AIFL.
Mazel tov on a fantastic evening. Everybody is here in such a good and positive mood. It must be fun for you.
Well, it is fun because it also is the result of the people here care about all of the issues that AIF, American Israel Friendship League, is about. And that's why.
Charlotte, you have devoted so much of your time and energy, not simply to Jewish causes, but for the state of Israel. If there was one thing you wished American Jewry understood better about Israel today, what would it be?
The thing that I see when people come to Israel who are not necessarily Jewish, they see that there's a great deal of happiness and we are more similar than we are different, and they see lots of non-Jewish, Jewish Israelis that are very comfortable in Israel, are very welcomed in Israel.
You know, there is a strikingly small percentage of American Jews who yet have visited Israel. One of the things we're all hoping is that we can encourage more and more families, Jewish families, to bring their children, and even as young adults and older adults, to visit Israel themselves.
Well, it's like there should be a birthright of not only the young people,
yes,
but our families.
Yes.
That should be.
Yes.
And then when they go see, when they see Israel, I mean, it's like, I have a son who graduated from Hebrew University. Jerusalem doesn't look like what it used to look like.
That's right.
Tel Aviv doesn't look. I mean, over the years you watch this thing.
Yes. Do you worry now for the Jewish future when you hear people say that the younger generation is moving away from their commitment to Israel and from the core of Jewish values? To what extent do you worry for it? To what extent do you feel it's overblown?
I don't think it's overblown. I think what we have to do is we have to get more opportunities to have young people go to Israel or learn about Israel or hear about it, because we have with so many intermarriages, the more they get to Israel, the more likely that even these children will understand their history. Because when they go there, this is it, the world is there.
You are wonderful. Who are your mother and father? What were their names?
Both my parents came from a place in Ukraine called Medved.
And their names were?
My mother's name was Rose Belivis. My father's name was Abraham Kirchner. They left Medved separately. They didn't know each other. And Medved is where Hasidim is born. My father was Yeshiva Bocha. He meets this girl in Warsaw. They're both going to the United States. And his family were not happy that he wasn't marrying a really religious, girl. But they got married. They couldn't get to the United States right away. So they had to go via Buenos Aires. That's why I went back many years later to see that. And so they came to America.
Well, Charlotte, you have made your parents very, very proud in so many, many ways. We love you very much, and the contribution you have made has been extraordinary. I wish you go from strength to strength, 120 and then some.
Good.
And anytime I get a chance to speak to you on Shalom TV, I'm going to take that chance.
Please
Thank
do.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
I think all too often we take friendship for granted. This is the organization that reminds us that America and Israel are on the same page, are friends as close as possible, and we need people to support that effort.
When you speak to people, colleagues and congregants, what's the one or two things you find American Jews don't understand about Israel, which you wish they would understand?
I think for some people, the story of Israel began after 1967, and they don't read all of the other chapters preceding it. To understand Israel, to understand America, to understand history, you have to look at the entire story. You can't have a truncated version. And when you have media that only tells you negative stories and you don't know the real story, it's very hard to refute. So it's very frustrating when you talk to young people in particular who only hear occupation and the evil of occupation and see Israel as the occupier and not as one that for years has attempted to find a peaceful solution without a partner.
What do you say to those who point out that the younger generation now has grown up at a time when they never knew there was not an Israel? There's always been an Israel. The fight for Soviet Jewry, it's over. Anti-Semitism, they never experienced it. And they come to Jewish life and the state of Israel very differently than you and I did, our generation, and even more so the generation that preceded us. What do you say to those who worry that the younger generation is removed experientially? It's not their fault. They just have a different experience of what it means to be a Jew. How do we address that? And do you feel, Joe, it's being addressed adequately in Jewish life today?
I think we waited too long to talk to our kids about Israel. We should have been talking about Israel in their earlier years, not when they get on the college campus and they're confronted by people who know the other side from their standpoint, but don't know the Jewish point of view. We got to be much more proactive. We're reactive. We hear a problem, there's a demonstration, we counter-demonstrate. But the real problem are the kids who are not there, who don't go to demonstrations, who don't care about Israel, and that's the group we have to reach. Jewish education has to be much more aggressive, much more creative in reaching those kids on an early level. Birthright for Israel is one of the most successful programs in the history of our people. We got to strengthen Birthright for Israel. Jewish Camping Experience, it's got to be better.
You see him on Shalom TV on his own program, Faith to Faith. You are looking at somebody who has given a lifetime of service to the Jewish community.
I'm not that old
yet. By the way, a young lifetime. Kol Tuva Hatzlacha. Thank you. So what brings you to the AIFL dinner?
Over the past year, some friends of mine and myself, including Jordan Greenblatt, whose grandfather is the treasurer of the organization, formed the Young Professionals Committee because, as you mentioned, we're the younger generation, and we feel that to carry on the AIFL's mission, we need to get the 20-somethings, 30-somethings, young professionals involved, and that's why we're here tonight. We wanted to come and see what was going on right now and bring our generation into the loop.
Have you ever been to Israel?
I have, many times.
What is it like for you? What does it mean to you? What are some of the memories that stand out in your mind about your trips to Israel?
Well, I was actually lucky enough to spend a semester of high school there, so I have a sort of unique perspective. You feel like you're home. You walk down the same streets in the old, in the old city. You're in the Jewish Quarter, and you feel like you were there yesterday. And there's just a connection that you can't really describe. And I think now we're also trying to get tapped into the, the startup nation, as the presentation was about tonight, and learn more about Israel in that way. Whereas I have more historic and personal connections. Learn about the business and other developments going on.
The America-Israel Friendship League is proud to present its 2011 Partners for Democracy Award to Dan Senor and Sol Singer, co-authors of the book Startup Nation, the story of Israel's economic miracle.
AIFL, which is, they personify, this organization personifies so much of what we write about and talk about, and I really just want to honor Kenny here for being so passionate about this organization, so passionate about its mission, bringing this event together. So many people we interviewed for the book said to us, Ken Bialkin 3 decades ago mentored me when I was trying to get my company listed in New York. So many attorneys we spoke to talked about the mentoring and the teaching that Ken Bialkin did. So Ken, thank you for giving us all of this.
For you, what does an organization like this mean, and why are you so honored to be honored tonight?
Look, the AIFL is about the connection between the United States and Israel, deepening ties between leaders from both countries, the mass market from both countries, and the Startup Nation story, which is about the innovation happening in Israel, which is solving global problems around the world, including in the United States, and creating jobs in the United States. There's no other time in which Israel's contribution to the world, and the world of innovation and entrepreneurship, is more badly needed, and therefore that locked arms between the United States and Israel is all the more crucial. And AIFL as an organization personifies that mission.
As you travel around the world, your book now is translated into how many languages, Dan?
I've been told it's in 11 countries and 17 languages.
Mazel tov, that's
Thank
wonderful.
you.
What is it that people fail to really understand about Israel today?
Too many people believe Israel is a conflict and not a country. The reality, it's a country. It's not just a country. It's a country, as we chronicle in the book, that is contributing in so many areas, from medical device to clean tech to green tech to biotech, information technology, truly contributing, making a net contributive gain to the advancement of humankind as we know it. And if you read the headlines and read what furnishes the daily headlines each day, it looks like Israel is a conflict. Israel is a war zone. There's a war zone going on around Israel. The conflict is part of Israel's story, but it's an incomplete part of Israel's story, and there's a whole other thing going on in Israel, and I'm deeply committed to reminding the world about it.
By the way, how did you come to write the book?
I took a group of students from Harvard Business School to Israel in 2001. 27 of them were not Jewish. None of them had been to Israel before. At the end of the trip, they said, we get what's happening in Israel on the innovation side. We see it. We want to know how they did it, how they pulled it off. And Saul Singer, my co-author, and I, who's a writer in Jerusalem, over the years we kicked around, there must be some book that actually answers the how Israel pulled that off. There is no book that explains it. We decided to write it.
Did you ever dream it would become a bestseller like it has? I mean, in other words, you didn't write a novel. You wrote a book about how the state of Israel has created something, and it's a hit.
The most gratifying part of the book is that it's a book about Israel that's not for Jews. It's not to say that Jews won't appreciate the book, but it's when people look at this book, they don't find it in the Judaica section or the Israel section. They find it in the business section, in the economic section. Policymakers are reading it. Saul, my co-author, is on his way to Brussels right now to brief the European Parliament about it. It's touching communities that have no connection to Israel. In many respects, is giving them an opening to Israel.
One last question for you. So how do you become you? What's the Jewish background that you grew up in that gave you this love of Israel and the opportunity now to do what you're doing?
My father who's passed away, my father was involved with the Joint Distribution Committee. He worked for the Joint Distribution Committee. He was one of the top officials at the Joint Distribution Committee in Iran, in Tehran, in the late 1950s. He's been in Jewish community life his entire life. My mother's a Holocaust survivor. I have two sisters that live in Israel. It's very much what we're raised with.
Dan, Senor, it's an honor to meet with you.
Thank you.
And I wish you kol tuv v'hatzlacha.
Our second honoree tonight is Shai Agassi, who is a hero of Israel's innovation sector, a hero and a main figure of the book Startup Nation. And we're going to be calling up Mike Granoff, who is a key part of this story. For those of you who don't know, Mike raised the first money for Better Place, and is happy he did, because their last round was done at $2.25 billion. They've raised $800 million, which makes it the granddaddy of all Israeli startups. This is going to be a huge company, and Mike Granoff is here to accept the award on behalf of Shai Agassi.
What Shai envisioned was that if you could create a less expensive and a more convenient car that was more fun to drive, that's what consumers would go to, and you would have a market-based way to actually end the oil dependence. And with the network that we're putting in place, that's exactly what we're delivering. For those, I know many in this room have already had the pleasure of visiting our visitor center in Tel Aviv. If you haven't, the next time you're in Israel, please come, and please drive the car so you can see for yourself what it's going to be like. There are already sales taking place at that center, and beginning in January of 2012, just about 6 weeks away, those cars will begin to get delivered to consumers across Israel. So it's an honor for me to represent Better Place tonight, to represent Shai, and I look forward to seeing all of you in Israel driving electric cars and all around the world. Thank you.
Why is the AIFL and what it symbolizes so important?
Well, I've been involved with the league almost since its inception. And it is because it is a unique vehicle for bringing non-Jews, not just Jews, together to express their love for Israel, to work on behalf of Israel. Too much of the time we spend focusing on narrow differences between the two countries. The media highlights it, we highlight it, and we lose sight of the immense amount of cooperation in economic areas, as we'll learn tonight, in the high-tech, agricultural, scientific, so many areas where the U.S. and Israel are bound together and the relationship only growing. In military, security, intelligence areas, it's as good as it's ever been. That's not a story the press is interested in. So sometimes, you know, God stepped back during the creation and said, Vayar ki tov, you know it's good. Sometimes, with all the problems that we have to step back and look at the work of the League, and the League is a valued member of the Conference of Presidents, contributes to it. Kenneth Bialkin is a past chairman of the conference and now the president of the League. We value that relationship very much.
I was privileged to travel to Israel with a group of American soldiers who were wounded in Iraq and Afghanistan. And we have a film that we're about to show you that gives you a sense of what their journey was like, meeting Israeli soldiers who were also wounded with post-traumatic stress disorder like these soldiers. Thank you.
I was attached to the 101st with a transportation unit. So we was moving supplies all over Iraq. I hurt my back in one of the explosions and had shrapnel in my knees.
I was deployed to Afghanistan, Bagram, Afghanistan, as a 11 Bravo infantry truck commander. I was injured in an explosion.
I was wounded in Lebanon. I got through that and sustained a couple injuries in the evacuation of Kuwait, helping another soldier.
During my second deployment to Iraq, I had a rocket that landed near me, and I was knocked out unconscious for a few seconds, maybe a minute or two. And that's why I ended up getting traumatic brain injury and PTSD as well.
The biggest thing I had was just walking into Israel saying, wow, this is going to be a hostile environment. Am I going to have to watch my back every time? And it was totally different. It was like walking, like if I was walking down the streets in Manhattan, even safer.
Israel is made up of so many different ethnic backgrounds, and yet they're all fighting together to save that one particular spot.
Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, and they just care about their homeland and about each other and by having peace in the Middle East.
I really connected with the female Israeli veteran. We're not that different at all in what we've experienced in the military and after as a female veteran. So it's been amazing.
Our society has a huge debt of gratitude to pay to you.
This trip is perfectly aligned with the America-Israel Friendship League because our mission is to bring together the people of the United States and Israel. And the impressions and memories of this trip are going to last a lifetime.
Thank you to the AIFL, Harley Littman, and also Heroes to Heroes, Judy Schaefer. They came together to put this whole trip for us. Thank you. I love Israel.
The trip was very spiritual for me in so many ways, but to meet the other female veteran that I met, we connected in a way that I've never connected with another female in my life.
In what way?
We understood the experience of what it was like in a battlefield situation. And that's, I can't explain the connection. It's just there. It's like the connection.
One thing I would like to say, when she came back, she told me she spent days with people who were in conflict every day of their life. Unlike the United States, where you go into combat, it's over, and you come home and you deal with the casualty of that combat. The doctors were combat veterans. The veterans themselves were supportive of other veterans. But in her experience, she's never experienced that before, only because it's not an everyday issue. And when she came back, she was so resolved to doing something about that.
It motivated you?
It motivated me, yes it did. It was so nice to be able to sit down with their doctors there, and their professionals, and everyone's a veteran there. So it's nice to talk to a psychiatrist or a mental health worker that's been through it and understood it.
That's a very different experience than being in the American society.
It's huge because they understand where you're coming from, and you don't have to, they just understand, they feel it.
One more question for both of you. What is your feeling for or about the Israeli soldier and the Israeli army?
Well, I can go back a little bit further than she can. I spent a year and a half in the Middle East in Libya before Gaddafi took over. And I understood the culture and the nature of the people there. And from that transition, and again, being a little older and knowing what the Israeli people have gone through, to see their fortitude, their resolve, their resistance to giving way, all right? Whether it be Moshe Dayan, whether it be Menachem Begin, they always came to the forefront of being independent. She's independent.
I have one thing to say to both of you. Look, this is a Jewish event, and everybody here is passionate about the state of Israel and the contribution and sacrifice of the Israeli soldier. But I want you to hear me. We're also Americans, and we are grateful and proud of the two of you. We thank you for your service. You have made an invaluable contribution to this country, and that you're doing it also with Israel is just icing on the cake. So I salute you and thank you very, very much. I wish you good health and healthy, wonderful life. And thank you both, Michelle and Richard.
I hope someday the Americans can adapt the technology that the Israelis have developed to help their own wounded warriors.
Thank you. We love you very much. Thank you very much. So I have a great pleasure now. I'm staying with one of my heroes, the president of AIFL, the American Israel Friendship League, Harley Lipman. And what an event you threw tonight. Mazal Tov, first of all.
Well, thank you very much, but the real Mazal Tov goes to the American soldiers who served in Afghanistan and Iraq that I saw you speaking to earlier, who really are the best of us, who we brought to Israel and fell in love with Israel, became Zionists. They love Israel. I don't know if you found that out in speaking to them.
Yes, I did.
They'd love to go back. Some of them are studying at Hebrew University. Some of them would like to enlist in the IDF. So it's a great success for the America-Israel Friendship League.
You have been a leader for your entire life. It is wonderful the work you do for the Jewish world, for the American Jewish community, and through AIFL. I wish you kol tuv v'hatzlacha, and your voice will always be heard on Shalom TV. Thank you, Ken, for all you do.
You're too kind, but all I can say to that undeserved compliment is that when one does the kind of thing that I try to do, I get more from it myself.
Very sweet of you.
In terms of the satisfaction, in terms of knowing I'm fighting in a fight that I may not win, but is worth fighting. And
I will,
people will
as long as you're fighting, we have a good chance to win. You're a dear friend. I wish you all the best.